Welcome to Feels Good. I hope you're all feeling good this morning. The rain has stopped. I think it's going to be a nice day, and there's so much to see and do here today. You're going to have a fantastic time. So thanks all for coming, and in particular, thanks for coming into this tent. Exciting place to be. We're going to talk about when the land comes alive, ponds, wings, and buzzy things. So this is all about, when you're farming, obviously the main focus is food production, but farming in a certain way and allowing space for nature can open up a whole new world of wildlife, which obviously is important in itself, but can also bring great benefits in terms of well-being, in terms of adding value to your products and reducing your costs, and also in terms of helping sell your product, because the consumer now is very conscious of the importance of nature. So in Ireland at the moment, we have a biodiversity emergency, which is real. We've lost so much in terms of our species. We can see our issues around water quality, even air quality in parts. And farmers often are accused of being the problem. But actually, more often than not, farmers are the solution. So farming, when it's done well, can offer amazing solutions for wildlife. And given that farmers own over 70% of the land in Ireland and manage it, they are, I suppose, our first responders to these challenges, I think, around climate and biodiversity. So this morning, we have three great speakers who are involved in wildlife conservation through farming or direct conservation. And we're going to give each of them the opportunity to tell us a little bit about themselves and their story. And then we're going to have a chance for yourselves to ask some questions. And we'll be wrapped up within the hour, so we'll let you off out then. And really what we want to do today is to reassure any farmers that are in the audience that creating space for nature isn't expensive, it isn't complicated, it's not going to get in your way of farming, but in fact it can actually bring huge benefits and it can be very easily done. And we've seen that time and again. My own background, very briefly, I work with a little charity called Burrenbeo Trust, and we've been working with farmers in the Burren for about 25 years now. And the Burren is this magical landscape in the west of Ireland, so rich in biodiversity, in archaeology and in cultural heritage. And by working with farmers and giving them the supports, financial and advisory supports, and the sense of purpose, we've been able to improve and enhance the environment of the Burren every single year for the last number of years by working with farmers. And that's been of benefit to our national biodiversity, but also to the farmers involved, who it gives them a sense of purpose, and it gives them a sense of great, I think, joy working to conserve their landscape. Since then, I've been involved in projects like Farming for Nature, where we try and highlight great exponents of farming for nature across Ireland. There's one of our ambassadors, Eddie, is here. You'll hear from him this morning. And we have a little project called the Hare's Corner, where we give landowners support to create small spaces for nature on their land. And the feedback is phenomenal from creating ponds and little mini woodlands and orchards. People just love it. And I'm also involved in a project called Refarm, where we're bringing private sector funding to farmers to give them the support to create more space for nature on their land. But really my role here this morning is to get the most out of these three in front of me and deliver the most benefit to yourselves as an audience. So I'm going to start by introducing to the podium Merlin. So Merlin Becker is with the Irish Grouse Conservation Trust. And be warned, Merlin loves to motivate and stimulate and provoke. So, Merlin, the stage is yours. We'll get the day after a lively start. All yours.
Thank you very much, Brendon. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to time myself here because I think, is it 7 or 8 minutes we have?
Take 8.
Yeah, 8, so I can talk for Ireland. So anyway, good morning, everybody. My name is Merlin Becker. I hail from the Wicklow Mountains originally, but I'm here to talk to you about the glorious Glenwerry Hills. That doofer's not working. We'll go back to go forward. So anyway, I am the only grouse gamekeeper on the whole island of Ireland, but as I said, I hail from the Wicklow Mountains originally. I trained with the Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust over in Scotland for around 10 years, and now I am back here on home shores to try and make a difference in the uplands. So that's my amazingly trustedly friend Freya. It's one of my German pointers that I use for counting my grouse. I'm going to talk relatively quick on this front, guys, because again I'm probably limited on time. 8 minutes is quite a lot quite a little to cram everything in. So a brief introduction to Irish Grouse Conservation Trust. So we were set up in 2006. We initially did a grouse count on the hill. Lord Antrim and his then head keeper Robert Luff counted 7 grouse on the Glenwerry hills over the roughly the 5,000 acre beat that I look after there now in 2006, and basically they're on the verge of extinction. That's when the IGCT was set up to basically stop them from going extinct, and now over that 18-year period now we're sitting at approximately 300 odd grouse on the Glenwerry hills now, so it's been an amazing revival. But one of the main aims of the charity is to educate through a sustainable and results-based process that best practice moorland management can be a huge deliver for landscape scale true nature recovery. Underpinned by this now is the Glenwerry Hills Regeneration project. This was set up in 2009, I believe, basically to try and buck the trend in biodiversity loss. At that time, up at the Caffrey Hill farm, which is around 20 minutes up the road from here, there was a huge loss of biodiversity back then at that time, and we're still sort of seeing it around about other places, but that was started up in 2009, so it's a lot of partnership organisations there. So Caffrey owning the land, the IGCT doing the predator control and habitat management, and the RSPB doing the bird survey work. But there's also other partners involved there. There's AFBI, which is Agri-Food and Bioscience Institute, Northern Ireland Environment Agency, and Queen's University. So it's a fantastic model of partnership working, and actually something that's very, very, very progressive in the landscape, and it's massively underpinned by the 18 farmers in that area. So we're roughly covering over a 5,000 acre area in that landscape scale conservation model. And that's just a bit of a flavour of the map there. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we're prominently dealing with 80% blanket bog on the hill. So very, very, very unique habitats there, and very, very precious to be looking after. So Glenwerry is just stuffed with wildlife. It is basically bucking the whole national trend for biodiversity loss. We have the highest density of Irish hare in the country. We have a huge array of birds of prey up there. It's the best mountain in Ireland to see our 9 birds of prey species. And just everything is just booming there. The curlew population there, we have one of the strongest, or if not the strongest, curlew population in the whole of the country as well. So the 2 main key driving factors behind this success over the Glenwerry Hills Regeneration Project area would be best practice predator control and practical habitat management. 2 very most contentious things, predator control and particularly burning, but I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about it today and try and open your mind a bit more and see it from my point of view that it's not actually as extremely damaging as a lot of people would like to believe. So the vermin records there, so this focus, it's a very hard thing to look at for a lot of people that maybe not really open to the idea of predator control, but it's a slide that I like to give at presentations and actually explain to people the weight of predators in our countryside now is so vast. To give you an example for the foxes there from one predator, so that was just in one single season, by removing 212 foxes over that 5,000 acre, a fox can eat between 1 and 3 pounds of food a day, so they say that's 1.5 pounds of food a day, 365 days a year. It's 527 pounds per year per fox. Over that 5,000 acre area beat that I looked after now, by removing one predator over that area, we've actually left 52 tonnes of biomass in the environment has been left in that area because the fox is not eating it. So that's a pretty scary figure. And 52 tonnes of anything is a lot of anything, but it's not always going to be all grouse chicks or all curlew. But it's a significant amount of carrion in there, leverets as well, rabbits and everything else. But still, it just gives you a bit of a picture there that our predators are having a massive effect in our environment. And a lot of the reason why we have so much wildlife species up there is because they're getting peace and they're getting a chance to breed and rear enough young each year to actually contribute to the population, not just to keep it stable or just slightly declining. So habitat management is something that's very, very important, because without one or the other, you can't really achieve the huge levels of success that we've seen. There's been lots and lots of projects over the years that are just sticking to habitat management, but they're just really struggling to get past that glass ceiling of biodiversity increase, particularly for ground nesting wildlife. So we administer quite a lot of burning on the mountain, but we also do quite a bit of cutting. But we do a cool burn, so it's a monumental difference between a wildfire, which is hugely damaging to the peat layer, versus a cool fire. You can actually check it out on YouTube there. There's actually videos of gamekeepers across the water putting 50-pound notes slightly underneath the moss layer and on iPhones and burning over the top of the layer, and actually the 50-pound note hasn't even been touched. So if you have a bit of time, go and check out some of those clips. So we're doing very small congregated areas of between 1 and 4 acres in size, very, very small scale, creating your lovely habitat mosaic and creating all those micro habitats. And again, we're future-proofing that landscape for wildfire as well. We're seeing huge wildfires now. The Morayshire wildfire was the biggest in Scotland's record. 24,000 acres burnt in that one single fire, and quite ironically, it was actually part of it was stopped on an area that was hit to Grousemore's Quarter Estate and Loch and Dorb Estate. So it's basically ensuring that these landscapes are a living landscape. I grew up in the Wicklow Mountains now. There's no burning, no grazing, no nothing, no people there, and it's just a dead landscape. No hen harriers, no nesting curlew. They've all gone regionally extinct there. And when humans are left out of the situation, particularly in my opinion, with management, you generally lose a lot of biodiversity. So this is some of the Glenwerry grouse counts. As I said, we started off at 6, and now we're sitting at around 300. Ups and downs. We've had a lot of ups and a lot of downs over the years. That's my German pointer is using for counting grouse. This year was a very poor year for grouse, unfortunately, but the work needs to keep on continuing. The Irish hare density, folks, so that's one of Glenwerry's most amazing successes. So we're sitting at the highest density. That was in 2024 figures. So we're sitting at that height there was 68 hares per square kilometre. Your average Irish, Northern Irish density is 1 to 3. They're one of the first species to react to professional fox control. These are some of the grouse shoot days that we carry out in the year, very small scale. We only have maybe 1 or 2 shoot days in a year. If there's a harvestable surplus, we haven't shot this year. There wasn't enough birds to shoot. So, but again, as I said, the work must continue. So we have people from all sorts of communities. We have around 75 to 85 people. I've got friends coming up from Galway, Cork. There's guys come across from Scotland and everything. It's a really, really huge community-driven and collective between everybody there. And all grouse go to the pot, which is very, very important for us. So this is one of the last slides I'm going to probably talk about, guys. So this is we actually have an amazing nature recovery blueprint here in the Glenwerry Hills. As I call it, the Glenwerry Hills Nature Recovery Zone. So we were managing this in conjunction with the RSPB and a number of other partners and an amazing amount of farmers, around approximately 100 farmers plus. So this is a landscape scale area now, so we're dealing with approximately 20,000 acres. You break it down to Northern Ireland's 3.5 million acres. That's less than 1% of the landscape, and we're actually producing a huge range of wildlife there. 60% of Northern Ireland's grouse population, approximately 23% of Northern Ireland's curlew population, approximately 12% of Northern Ireland's hare population, around 7% of our native lapwing population. So a really fantastic project of landscape scale, true nature recovery, and it's been a real privilege to be a part of that, working with so many different organisations and so many different farmers and leading the way. So I'm hoping one day, in the next few years, we'll be leading this into policy and seeing a wildlife warden or a gamekeeper or a whatever, but this model here itself instigated into the Sperrins, the Mourns, the Stacks, the Blooms, the Wicklow Mountains. You know, we do have a lot of knowledge here to get this stuff boots on the ground for results. You know, enough is for talking, and enough science is important, but we need management and we need action now on the ground. And yes, just want to say a huge thank you to all the farmers and all the partner organisations that have received this record-breaking success of conservation with us over the years, and long may it continue. So thank you very, very much.
Just before you go,
sorry, I went a little bit over there.
No, you're perfect. Just one question. The grazing is the big driver, I assume, in upland management. It's mainly sheep still, or have you looked at other grazers? Yeah,
predominantly sheep. There's quite a lot of cattle in the mix there as well, but mainly down the lower ground. Unfortunately, with our schemes, we're not able to graze cattle on blanket bog, so which is some people are for it, some people are against it, but predominantly sheep would be the main agriculture form in the uplands. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of, just one other quick question, in terms of landowner and farmer involvement, what's the motivation for the farmers to get involved? Is this work? Do they do the work? Do you do the work for them? Is it funded? How does that work?
Yeah. So that was an overarching Curlew Life project that was RSPB had won, and then we were administering the predator control contract on the ground. But there was a lot of farmers within the EFS scheme, so that was underpinned by a lot of that with the farmers and buy-in, and a lot of the farmers were very, very, very keen to get involved. They love the curlew, and it's probably the best stronghold for curlew in the country, certainly on a mainland site. So yeah, there was a lot of initiatives there to help them, both funding and advisory. RSPB did a lot of the advisory support for farmers on the ground. We did a lot of the management and predator control.
Some support with paperwork and stuff like that as well. Is that the
case? Yes, a serious amount of
I met some farmers there, I think, for whom that was a big bonus.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, they need big help with that.
Thanks very much.
Brilliant.
So there's a couple of real controversial ones in there, as you might imagine, burning and predator control, and we might come back to it. It might seem counterintuitive, but we can have an opportunity to ask questions about that in a wee moment. I'm going to go to Eddie next. So Eddie's a suckler cow farmer here in Antrim. And I've met Eddie before and seen his work, and there's a beautiful video for him on the NFFN website as well. So Eddie, I might get you to say a few words about your farming system.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow, Merlin. I'm a small suckler farmer from County Antrim. I was a sheep farmer. I also have another job as well, so I'm part-time. I was quite skeptical, like sort of biodiversity and stuff up until about 10 years ago. And I sort of got my act together and looked around and read a few books and looked at my area and thought, this is a green desert. Around here it's silage fields with barely any hedges in it, and decided to go down the route of trying to increase the biodiversity of my farm. The first thing we did was dig a few ponds, and within a couple of years that really increased the insect life. Frogs, all the other insects, which then I noticed brought birds, bats. The other thing we have are hare. Impressed with that myself, but it's been learning curve. Just read a lot of books, so I've been reading loads and trying to do my best to increase it, the biodiversity. Plant trees, plant a lot of willow trees because they're idiot proof. I can just go out, cut a willow, stick it in the ground, grows. 2 years later, go and cut it, put 20 more in the ground. It's great for insects. It's great for along the sides of shucks, rivers. The other thing I've been trying to do in my ground is sort of slow down the watercourses and create little eddies in them to try and encourage invertebrates, things like that. We also, on my farm, we have about 370 acres, so the other thing we have on that is 70 acres of raised peat bog, which we're working with Ulster Wildlife Trust now to sort of re-wet it. We bought that in, we bought about 250 acres between 2021 and 2022, and that bog was part of it. It was dug about 100 years ago for the peat and hasn't been touched since. But about 30 years ago, the Rivers Agency thought it would be a good idea to dig the river that ran through it about 3 feet deeper and get as much water downstream as quick as possible. So I can't do anything but slowing down the river, but can slow down all the watercourses going into the river and trying to re-wet the bog at the minute. So that's as much as I'm going to tell you at the minute to get asked some questions. Thank you.
Hang on a minute. Just one or two quick questions. Just about your suckler operation. Tell us a little bit more about that. What numbers, what breeds do you have?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Should have told you that. We're working with Herefords and Shorthorn. We run mob grazing, so we're shifting the cows every sort of, well, I was doing it every 24 hours, but I've started doing it in bigger mobs now every 48 hours, just because it's so much effort involved in it, and I work as well, so trying to give myself a bit more leisure time if I can.
You might describe mob grazing to people, because that's a really interesting term. Just, how do you practice it in your
Well, it's very popular at the minute. It's trying to keep most of my cattle in one group. Years ago, we'd have had, maybe 4 different groups of animals. Mm-hmm. Now, try and keep everything, well, to work around the breeding, obviously, but trying to keep everything in one group. Graze a certain area, high impact on it with the cattle, shift them and let that grass go for about 60 days minimum before we go on it again. I'm not completely, I do use some chemical fertilizer. I used about 3 tonne of nitrogen this year. But the only other thing we use is farmyard manure, a little bit of our own slurry. Okay.
And what benefits have you seen from the mob grazing so far, Eddie, if any? Or why do you do it?
I like the idea of it resting, giving the grass long rest periods. The more I've read about that, the better idea it seems. Historically, it seems the way animals worked years ago. Big, large mobs of animals that come along, graze, move on, predators would move them on. It's thickened up the sward. Thick up the roots, a lot deeper roots now when you go and dig the grass up a lot deeper.
Yeah. This probably helps with a bit of climate resilience as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, it helps in even a very dry year like this and a very wet year. It helps because wet year you're not poaching the ground as much. In the dry year, the grass has deeper roots. It's able to bring up. No, we have much problem with drought. It's not. We have a bit of very dry hill, and you see it burning up, in the summer. But this year haven't put any cattle on it at all. So, come the winter time, I'm going to outwinter them on that hill, a lot of cattle, and bale feed them with hay, and just see how that works. Still experiment and just do different things to see what works, what doesn't work.
And what's driving, Why would you go putting in ponds and moving to mob grazing and messing around with
Like
peatlands?
having fun on diggers.
You like having fun on diggers, is that it? Ah, there you go. There's
No,
a good selling point
that
for
is a
ponds.
big selling
Have
point.
fun with your digger in your farm. Dig a few ponds.
But no, it's crazy the amount of wildlife it brings. Like the amount of insects and, like I say, the birds and the bats and frogs. Like, we walk around to any part of our farm this year, there's just frogs everywhere, and you're thinking, I'm probably trampling these things, putting the cattle over them and working with the tractors and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just like a switch went off, over the last 4 years. It's just went from very little sort of wildlife and stuff till just loads.
And
now,
without putting words in your mouth, has that changed your attitude to the farm, to the farming system?
Yeah, it has, yeah.
In what way?
It's a lot more nicer. It's
Yeah.
nice to go onto the farm now. There's years ago you'd just be like, it was just, our hedges were all like this height years ago, grazed down. Now they're all maybe 15 feet and thick. And now when I'm fencing, when I put new fence up, take the old one down and maybe fence out another 1.5 meters or 2 meters from the hedge, let that thicken up.
Okay. And your cattle use it for browse?
They do, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What are you doing with all the money that you're saving on hedge cutting, Eddie?
My mate cuts my hedges. He's not so
Okay,
chuffed
he's not
about
too
it,
happy.
yeah.
He's not too happy. And what did neighbours think? Because hedges, like keeping your farm looking
Oh,
well.
I like what the neighbour. I don't care what the neighbours think. I
He's
have a
a
couple
one-off.
of neighbours like their hedges like high and tight.
Yeah.
This here,
Yeah.
there's nothing on them at all.
Right. Yeah.
I like to sort of upset the apple cart a little bit
Okay.
with those guys.
Now we're getting behind the motivation. He likes upsetting the neighbours and playing with his big digger. So this is what Farming for Nature is all about. Thank you so much, Eddie. We'll have a few more questions in a minute. Great. Our third speaker is Richard Winspear. Richard is from RSPB. So Richard, welcome to the podium.
Thank you very much, Brendon. I think we're three speakers talking from very, very different sectors. So I'm going to be talking about restoring nature on an arable farm and basically what we've learnt from buying and managing our own farm for 25 years. And in terms of trying to restore nature but maintaining productivity and profitability along the way. And it's not all been plain sailing. We've learnt a lot along the way, and I think there's still much to learn to make nature-friendly farming as productive in the arable sector as it can possibly be. So 25 years ago, we did buy what was a typical arable farm of the area in East Anglia in England. This was the farm we bought at the time when we bought it. As you can see, the cropping was pretty much to the hedge, and the hedges themselves were quite short and gappy. And we had the mission really to see if it was possible to restore nature, but without impacting productivity and profitability. And in the course of the last 25 years, we've seen a threefold increase in the farmland bird species, fivefold increase in farmland butterflies. So I think we've nailed the nature-friendly bit of it, and we've maintained profitability through using agro-environment to fund the work that we do, alongside sort of the way that we farm. Productivity-wise, I think it's still in a balance. We've certainly been productive, but it's yo-yoed a bit, and I can talk a bit about that going forwards. What we didn't do is go organic, and the reason we didn't go organic is because we wouldn't have learnt anything new. We know what would happen if we turned a conventional arable farm into an organic farm. We know that some wildlife would go up, some wildlife wouldn't go up. We wouldn't have learnt anything new. We certainly would have seen a knock in yields, probably about 40% reduction in yields. And to be honest, we wanted to learn lessons that we could then share with all arable farmers in the UK, and we didn't want to lose the 90% of the audience that would probably never go organic. So we deliberately maintained it as a conventional arable farm. So what we set off to do was to establish some of the habitats we thought would be necessary to restore nature on the farm. And we did this on the least productive 10% of the cropped area. We now have evidence, we didn't have it 25 years ago, but we now have evidence from a number of studies that 10% wildlife habitat on an arable farm is kind of the tipping point at which you can pretty much guarantee more nature with that scale of habitat. And as we were developing the Hope Farm model, we actually got together with the expertise of all the other wildlife NGOs that study things other than birds, so amphibians and reptiles, a whole wide range of insects, woodflies, bumblebees, plants, and we also brought in the expertise of the Game and Wildlife Conservation Trust in the form of Peter Thompson, who was the advisor at the time, to kind of put it all together as to a single recipe to restore nature rather than just birds. And these are the 6 key actions we came up with, and they've stood the test of time. I think we're pretty much certain that these are the key things that an arable farmer could do to really maximise the value of the farm for wildlife. So maintain and enhance existing habitats on the farm, whatever they might be. Focus very much on maximising the value of field boundaries and margins, because that's the kind of network that runs through the farm and connects the farm with adjacent farms. And then there's 3 features that, if you haven't got them, you need to create them, and if you have got them, enhance them as much as you can. And they are flower-rich habitats, wet features like farm ponds, and seed-rich habitats. Those 3 elements of an arable farm really do drive or address the key drivers of some of the declines that we've seen in some species. And then it's what you actually do in the farmed area itself. And I have to say that from what I've seen of arable farming in Northern Ireland, this is probably not as relevant to you as it is in England, because we're focusing very much on what you do in the middle of fields in excess of 40 acres, 16 hectares, like beetle banks and flower-rich strips and fallow plots for ground nesting birds. So yeah, it might be one that's not there aren't that many farms with fields over 40 acres around here. So that was what we set out to do. After 10 years of doing Hope Farm, we saw a 3-fold increase in both birds and butterflies. We maintained profit because of the nature of the agri-environment scheme, funding, sort of income foregone, plus costs of doing the habitat creation. And we had maintained profitability as well, productivity as well. Now, over the subsequent 5 years, we didn't see a continued increase in wildlife. It all kind of plateaued at a higher equilibrium. But what we did see was a decline in profitability. Over the course of 5 years, we went from mid-table in our benchmarking group towards the bottom. So we got a land agency firm in to assess what was going wrong. And it largely came down to soil degradation, that the intensive farming we were still doing on the 90% of the farm was basically degrading our soils, and we were getting far less productive crops as a result. And so in 2015, we decided to change track and bank what we'd done with the 10% habitats and start focusing what we did with the 90% crops that were still on the ground. And this is what we now refer to as regenerative farming largely, with the addition of complementing our habitats with integrated pest management to look after our natural pest control and our pollinators. And in doing this transition, we started to work much more with agricultural partners like ADAS and ADHB, Agri, because they were all looking at very similar things, but from a productivity point of view rather than from a nature point of view. And some real synergies started to come out in terms of what we had already done, habitat creation-wise, in terms of its benefits for farming. And one of the key things was a wake-up that we were still farming the crops as we'd farmed them 20 years previously. But because of our habitats, we didn't actually need to use those insecticides anymore. It was a bit of a no-brainer now when you look back on it. But fundamentally, our natural pest control potential, with all the habitats, the flower-rich habitats in particular, meant that we had the natural pest control. Why go in and spray out the pests and all the natural beneficials when the natural beneficials could largely do that job? And so we went insecticide-free. There was a study done by Centre of Ecology and Hydrology at a state called Hillsden, where they modelled taking out 8% of the farm to create habitats, the same habitats as we created. And they found that if you took 8% of the farm out to create those habitats, the actual total productivity of the farm was exactly the same as if you farmed without those habitats conventionally, because the natural pest control and the pollination services boosted the yields of those fields sufficiently to mitigate. So it did come out greater productivity, but it came out exactly the same. So, and also it was much more resilient to pesticide resistance and all those kind of issues that we're facing as arable farmers now. Okay, right, I better move on. And in all honesty, I'd like to stand up and say we are more profitable and as productive as conventional, but I think we can say that we're still, it's still in progress in terms of our productivity. There's a website where you can see the 6 key actions and how to deliver them. In terms of managing the 90%, we have learnt a lot along the way, like I say. So there's pros and cons of nature-friendly farming. So we've used compost and cover crops to boost our soil organic matter and basically improve our soils. But that has come at a cost because we use compost waste from council garden waste. And the microplastics in that, we've basically had to stop using it because of that, and also the cost of doing it. I think you've probably got much more easy access to animal manures to do that kind of job here in Northern Ireland than we have in East Anglia. Insecticide-free, it's great that we are still maintaining productivity through insecticide-free farming, but we do take that added risk that we haven't got the can to resort to if we do get an infestation. So every now and again, the natural pest control doesn't quite do the job, and we're not in a position really to use the insecticides and go back there. A wider rotation is great, but it does mean that you're growing the most productive crops, sorry, the most profitable crops less often in the rotation. So there is a cost benefit there to that. And we delay our drilling to address pest infestations, but again, that risks you getting late into the season and run the risk of not being able to get on the ground because of the conditions of the soil. So in conclusion, I think there's definitely a growing interest in more sustainable and more resilient farming. And regenerative agriculture is largely about restoring soils, but I would say there is evidence that restoring soils in conjunction with creating the habitats around the fields to improve your natural pest control and your pollination services, there's definitely a case to include that in this resilient and sustainable farming model. And I'm absolutely convinced that we can prove that we are as profitable as other arable farmers going forwards. I'd like to be more productive, and I think we can get there. When you think that we're not going to have degraded soils going forward, we're not going to suffer so much from the resistance of pesticides, we basically, I think, as a industry, we can all learn from each other in how we actually make nature-friendly farming as productive and profitable as it can be. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Richard. I'm sorry for hurrying you. Just one question of clarification. You said you started off, you're kind of mid in the league table, then you started to fall. So where are you now in the league table of profitability, and why did it start to fall at that point? You didn't do anything different. Was it because the soils are being depleted?
So the reason, I mean, at the time we had a contractor who had we were a real small postage stamp in their whole farm setup, and therefore the timeliness of operations meant that they had to go onto the land often when the conditions just weren't right. Okay. And the decisions we make now with a smaller contractor working with us is that basically if we can't get on the land at that time of year to do that job, we will actually not go on that land, and we will resort to a spring crop rather than try and force a winter crop in. So we make those kind of decisions to help just make sure that the soil doesn't get any worse. And it's still work in progress because we are coming back from very compacted soils, and even with all the organic amends we've done, I mean, we are now, 10 years down the line, but we did it as a trial first, so it's not rolled out across the whole farm. We're still not in the top half of the table, but we're certainly not at the bottom anymore.
Even considering you've a lot less input costs now, that's not still being reflected in your position.
Yeah, so I mean, someone's estimated we're saving £200 a hectare on input costs, which is phenomenal when you think about it. So Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the benchmarking group has fallen apart a bit since COVID, so we need to reconvene. But
Absolutely.
yeah, we when we do reconvene, I think we've got a lot to learn in terms of the benefits of just reducing inputs, especially with the costs of fertiliser where they are now. Yeah.
Indeed. Great. Thanks, Richard.
Okay.
Now we've got that was really interesting. And I think Hope Farm is well named because, yeah, that kind of learning journey gives us a lot of hope, I think. Now we've got time for questions. And because I'm here, I get to ask the first question, but I want you to ask as many questions as you can. I was just going to get the ball rolling by asking a very personal question of the three of you. Like, you're all on these learning journeys around nature, but where did it start? Like, what was the trigger? Where was the sort? Can you identify one point in your lives at which, when nature suddenly became important to you? What was the trigger for you? Maybe start with Eddie, because I'm particularly interested with farmers. I often ask them this question, and the answer is always that bit different. Where did you get your interest, Eddie, in nature from? What started you on this bit of a journey?
I don't know what.
Hang on. Presents for everybody. There you go. I think we can.
I just sort of gradually get into it. It wasn't like a sort of rose from Damascus kind of thing. It was just.
I think it's on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like a overnight thing. I just sort of started reading different books and thinking about the sort of what the biodiversity was like around Northern Ireland, and seeing, I think somebody described it in one of the books was like a green desert, and it sort of clicked with me. It's a bit like that, and I've plenty of spare acres I can be doing stuff with, and we're by no way intensive, never have been on our farm. Probably when I was younger I would have wanted to go down that way, but now I've sort of, no, it's because I'm a commodity, like any commodity. If I was, digging gold's going to be a price whatever the market's going to pay for it. My beef's going to be that. So all I can do is to either add value by doing something to it, which I didn't really want to do, didn't want to go down that road. So if I can produce my commodity as cheap as possible and no inputs, and that was also, there's not all, there was a selfish end to it as well,
Okay.
And then I just get into it. Yeah, then it's got like a bug. The more
Literally.
Yeah, the more I get into it, the more I could see things needed doing to improve the farm and improve the landscape. And then I was sort of surrounded by quite intensive farmers,
Okay.
and I could see like you guys are really doing bits of damage here. Like in February there, I had a real sickener. I had a guy, an old farmer beside us died, and another guy came in and rented the farm and was just dumping slurry in it, and with a slurry spillage incident above us. So it affected 3 of our watercourses running through our farm. And just things like that piss me off. It gives us a bad name as well. The whole thing with the loch, and it's not all farmers are good, and not all farmers are bad, and not all guys that have slurry problems are bad either. Sometimes accidents happen, but some things just aren't accidents.
Yeah. But you're not for turning. The journey you're on, you're enjoying it, and you're not for turning.
Yeah, no, definitely not. No.
Merlin.
Hello. So yeah, good question. I'm pretty certain that I probably started in the womb before I was born. my mum and my dad were very involved with the Irish Peatland Conservation Council years ago. And I was actually named after the bird of prey, the Merlin, not the magician, so just to clarify that fact. So yeah, it was from a very, very young age, then growing up in the countryside and mainly through hunting, shooting, fishing, and living off the land really is the main connection to it all, and still continues on today.
So you didn't do like a lot of kids do, go against their parents?
Yeah, no, I was with them from the very, very start until the very end.
Richard.
Yeah, well,
You're really confusing these guys down here by spotting, but anyway, try that.
hello. Yeah, just like Merlin, to be honest. I mean, I'll badly quote David Attenborough here, but when asked when did you get interested in nature, he said, well, when did you stop? Because innately he was interested in nature, and I feel the same. But I can remember the point at which nature-friendly farming became the big thing for me, and that was my very first contract with the RSPB, because I'd basically been educated and trained as a woodland ecologist, and then I got a contract working on the stone curlew in Wessex in England, and I spent 3 months working with farmers on stone curlews, and I basically went to them saying, look, I know stone curlews, you know farming, can you please tell me how to farm that will help this bird? And we shared ideas.
You asked, did you?
I asked them, and they invented the stone curlew plot, which is now an agri-environment scheme option, which basically is rolled out across England for lapwings as well. And the thing was that as an advisor going around literally knocking on every door of a farmer that had stone curlews rather than any farmer that was interested, 75% of them instantly wanted to help the stone curlew without any kind of incentive. There was no agri-environment scheme options at the time. They were prepared to manage their land for stone curlew. And I just thought, well, with that kind of enthusiasm, why would you not work with these people? Like you say, 70% of the UK is farmed. If we can get nature right on farmland, then we've largely solved the problem of the nature crisis.
Yeah. It's, I think, 3 great case studies, and credit to all 3 of you for your work. It's lovely to see how, like, the interaction between farming and landscape can deliver for nature. So it's not just about farming for nature. It's about, there's production here as well. There's other values. And I also like the fact that you went and asked. You weren't an expert telling people what needed to be done. You went and asked. So I think there's a need to bring together, the farming and ecological expertise, which is, I think, again, 3 really nice examples of that. Now, question here in the back left, please. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Merlin, a question on...
Would you tell us where you're from? We always love to know where
sorry.
people are from and what to do.
Robert Craig from Limavady, very intensive dairy and arable farmer 3 years ago, and now swung completely the other way with influence from my son. So one of my questions was, first of all, Merlin, do badgers fall into vermin category?
There's always one who asks that question, all right? The B words, the 3 B words, the badgers, the buzzards, and the burning. It's a very good question. Badgers obviously are protected under the Badgers Act 1992. So they wouldn't fall under the vermin category, but they would most certainly predate on our ground nesting wildlife. And in my own personal capacity now, not speaking from my organisation or any of the partners that I work with, I feel that if any animal is in a higher number, which badgers most certainly are, a recent Queen's University study has shown that badgers are believed to be 10 times higher population-wise in Northern Ireland than they were believed to be originally, due to drone technology now counting. If an animal or some form of species is in a relatively high number and is in a green conservation status, there should be mechanisms in place for their control, either for disease management control or certainly from my point of view for ground nesting wildlife point of view. But it's very, very, very contentious. A protected species is like a real no-go for most people. But badgers have different effects in different areas. Like I worked up in Aberdeenshire in Scotland, and there was a grouse moor area there, and the badgers never seemed to touch the lapwing nests. And then we had a really, really dry year. The earthworms bury deeper into the ground. Then the badgers need to switch on to an alternative protein source. So then they hit the lapwing nests, and they took 25 out of 75 nests. That was only one family group of badgers. So every year is so different, and every region is so different. So, yeah, I had a very, very difficult one.
Richard wants to come in on that.
Yeah, just in my experience on stone curlews. So 75% of stone curlew nests were predated, and we looked at the cause of that. We used nest loggers to log when the event was happening, and it was all nocturnal. So it was mammalian, it wasn't avian at all. Basically, we've recovered stone curlew and, in that part of the world, lapwing populations through good habitat management. Obviously, badger being a protected species, we haven't done any predator control on those farms, or there was no predator control in addition to what was being done for any family shoots, whatever. And so it is possible to overcome. It's amazing that a bird produces so many chicks, or has the capacity to produce so many chicks that they can withstand 75% predation. But that is the nature of bird ecology, that good habitat management is key. I was talking to Merlin about this earlier. There's a habitat context to this, so there are places where predator control might be necessary. But one thing we do need to address is why is it that the UK has got much higher meso-predator populations than the rest of Europe? Because that is the case. Merlin referred to it earlier. And if we can address the cause of the high populations of predators, it solves it for everyone.
Elaborate what you suspect the cause to be.
We don't know.
You don't know?
We
Do you have
don't
a
know.
suspicion? Do you have a theory?
No, apex predators is a massive one, obviously.
Okay, okay. Just before we go to the next...
So why I asked the question, we had a small out farm and we put 62 heifers onto it for 3 months, and the badgers fought on the bucket licks with the heifers. The badgers were hungry, and we had 52 of the 62 animals went down with TB. But nothing has been done about it, you know. So I was, but I wanted also to say to Richard, we do have an insect control on our farm. It's called milk. We spray 10 litres a hectare if ever we get any aphids problems, BYDV.
So you spray milk on...
Yes.
Okay. To control?
Aphids.
Haven't heard that before. Anybody come across that? Okay.
And we've actually gone now onto the grass with it, and it stimulates the grass in the spring as well. So we're doing that 3 times a season.
Okay. I want to give a chance to anybody else for a question. And while you put your hand up, I want you to go to the second B, buzzards. Would you like to say a word or two on buzzards?
Really, yeah?
Yeah? Good, bad? So like a
Okay,
lot of us are aware of them. But
Yeah, no, well, with buzzards in particular, it's... my 2 passions in life are red grouse and birds of prey, some of the 2 most contentious issues in the uplands. And I'm actually a falconer as well, big into birds of prey in that sort of regard for hunting. But it's back to that same issue. You know, if we are having a species like curlew in this island, for example, there's probably only 400 pairs left, north and south, maybe 500 if you want to be a little bit generous. So you got 500 pairs of curlew left, and you don't know the population of buzzards. It's hard to extrapolate, but you're looking at an extremely high population of one. And I'm not saying that buzzards are having, you know, it can't be blamed on one species per se, but you know what I mean. As I like to explain to people, if a buzzard eats a chick, a hen harrier eats a chick, a peregrine eats a chick, a fox eats a chick, a badger eats a chick, that's a lot of chicks. So there needs to be a little bit more of a frank and honest conversation with protected species that are in ever increasing numbers, but badgers and buzzards in particular have skyrocketed, and it's been an amazing conservation success story. But when are we going to have to say, right, we're going to have to step in? We can control a fox, we can control a grey crow, but we're not allowed to touch a badger, or we're not allowed to touch a buzzard if they're in very, very high numbers. It's extremely contentious, and there's a lot of people in this room thinking, what is this stupid gamekeeper talking about? But it's a conversation that we need to have, because there was a lot of conversation in Wales where now buzzards are having a huge impact on a lot of radio-tagged curlew over there. And do we want to step in and try and save the curlew, or do we want to leave the buzzards and a lot of the other protected predators come in and force that species into extinction? So it's a question we need to openly.
It's interesting to raise it. Yeah, interesting to raise it. We have a question here.
Thank you.
Please.
Yes. Hi, I'm Claire from RSPB, and I've been working with our farm nature advisory team for the guts of 20 years. So I have a question for Eddie. Eddie, you're talking about the green desert that we have in this country, and we're driving along and heart breaks when you kind of see our countryside. But you made a really interesting comment, and I'm curious about it because it's how we influence farmers. So we work with some amazing farmers, so there's absolutely some superb farmers that are delivering for nature and getting really incredible results. But there is a lot of farmers out there that are stuck. And I don't know, you made a comment about on your farm where you had started doing work and you'd noticed a difference. But I'm curious to kind of go back before you started making the difference. Did you know there was no nature? Did you think about it? Do you know, because that's how we influence farmers going forward. Do you think farmers have forgotten what nature is, or they think the green desert is full of nature? What is it?
I think they have, yeah. I didn't notice it. I assumed it was there, but never looked for it. And I think farmers are changing as well. Like, there was a lot of small farms. Now farms are getting bigger, and financial pressures for years. People were trying to get everything they could out of the farm, you know. I'm lucky because I don't rely on a farm income at all. So I can't really... I'm bit of an anomaly for that. You know, I'm not pushing every pound out of the place, but I have friends that, you know, need all their money, need everything they get, and I can't blame them. You know, they're a lot of pressure on those guys. I don't know how you influence. I know I'm not a big one for government intervention. I wouldn't. Everything I do off my own bat. I don't want any government intervention in my farm, or anybody telling me what to do, what to do, and where to do it. I think I can read books by ecologists and environmentalists and learn from them. You know, you know, maybe people would be happy to be subsidised for doing things like that. They would, but the other thing as well, paperwork and time is a big problem.
We have Richard.
Yeah, I would just like to come in and say that as somebody who works across the UK, Northern Ireland and DERA have what I think is the best model for helping farmers with nature-friendly farming anywhere in the UK, in a model of the group options in the EFS, whereby there are advisors on the ground to support nature-friendly farming, because that is definitely the only recipe that's ever worked in nature recovery for farming species in the UK, is where there are people working directly with the farmers to help them in nature-friendly farming, right, even down to doing their agri-environment application with them. Because no other model has worked. Just having the agri-environment scheme doesn't recover any species, has never done it. It's only when you've got an advisor going down the drive and helping the farmer do it that it works.
Yeah. If I might add to the answer, I've been working with, I always feel it's a privilege to work with farmers because they're great people and they're doers, and God, we need doers now more than we ever did. But I remember going to a farmer once, and he'd done quite a lot of land reclamation on some beautiful habitat, and I was going, oh my God. But then I sat down with him and I listened, and I heard what he had to say. He's going, look, I was encouraged, advised, incentivized to do this. And it makes me look good as a farmer, it makes me look progressive. And that got us thinking that really you have to come back with a better proposition for the farmer. And to me, it's always about the pocket, the head and the heart. The pocket, there has to be financial fairness out of it. And I think result-based payments are the way to go, because you're not telling a farmer what to do, but you're offering an incentive if he or she does the right thing. The head piece, the advice, and the paperwork, my God, I think we've taken a lot of the expertise as scientists away, and less farmers are feeling like, what do I know? Whereas that indigenous knowledge is invaluable. So it's tapping into that, but providing advice and providing support to navigate the bureaucracy that farmers, especially in protected areas, are subject to is phenomenal. But the really hard piece is the heart piece, and this is what Eddie, I think, was talking about. How do you change hearts and minds? This stuff is really important, but how do we convince farmers to go on that journey? Your son, that's an interesting one. I think sometimes you can be inspired by the next generation. And the next generation, I think, are inspired by the sense of purpose around farming. Can be, because farming at its best can be amazing. So if we can get farmers to take ownership of it, because too much of nature conservation is owned by the policymakers and the scientists, and it's giving that sense of ownership and heart back to the farmers.
Yeah, can I just say, so we work on the recovery of farmland species, so it's birds or nature, that's what we're doing, but they're farmland species. They need farmers, and I need farmers to be profitable or they won't be farmers. You know, so it is trying to find the right mix and working with governments to try and get some support for farmers so they can do this on the ground.
Yeah, spot on. I think that's the message from today. We need each other. So we have time for one more question, maybe. Anybody else with a question? Yeah, here in the front row. Yeah. There's one last. Thank you.
For Merlin. Sorry, we're mixed farmers in the next two glens. My question for Merlin was, are you overpopulated with grouse, or why do you have a grouse shoot on some years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the grouse management world, we call it or game management world, we call it a harvestable surplus. So if there's enough breeding in the year, normally with us, if we're generally having a brood average of anything above 3 chicks per brood, is normally a good breeding season. So there's actually a sustainable number of grouse that you can harvest there for the pot without detrimenting the actual overall population. So yeah, it's basically just a sustainable model, really, if you can't. Because if you ended up overshooting
your grouse are going to dip and they're going to get to a population there that's not sustainable to obviously harvest them. So it's all working within the sustainable cycle of nature, really.
And would your grouse not spread out into other farming areas outside the Glenwerry farm?
Yeah, no, most certainly. There was farmers on the back of Slemish there, Dominic O'Boyle, and he hadn't seen a grouse in his farm in probably 20 years. And all of a sudden, there's a lot of farmers round about as well, as far as the White Man and then Carnarvon in direction, and the whole. It's amazing how that whole area there, all of a sudden, farmers are starting to see grouse, and lots of other hares are starting to go through the roof as well. So yeah, it's nice. It's basically the tidal effect of all the management really spreading out over the landscape scale, which is lovely to see.
Okay, thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Can I finish off by asking each of the speakers maybe to offer one practical tip to people here in the audience? So if you were to give them, people who are kind of interested and don't want to go all in, but would like to do something simple but effective for nature on their land, what might it be? What would be your top pick? Richard, we start with you.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'll just tell you what Tim Parton, a regenerative farmer in England, told me, which was basically do it at your own pace. Nature-friendly farming, it's not just a switch from being conventional to being full-on nature-friendly, and do it at your own pace. Try it, see if it works. If you don't think it works, try something else, and don't try and rush it. Yeah.
Great, brilliant. Merlin?
Certainly from a management point of view, back in the day, farmers used to be the shotgun above the hearth and the mantelpiece and everything. A lot of farmers used to do a lot of predator control back in the day for their own stock, but nowadays, very difficult. But what I would say, if you do have time and if you have a larson trap, set it up in your yard or around your wee bit of your home place, because it's amazing what you can do if you manage to remove grey crows and magpies. The bird life you can see around the farm now, it's just skyrockets. So a little thing. Fox control is a little bit more trickier, but most farmers can run a larson trap. It's not as labour intensive. So a wee little larson trap is a nice little investment for around the farmyard for all those chaffinches and sparrows and whatnot that are trying to survive.
Okay, brilliant. Eddie?
Mine's dig a pond.
Yeah.
Get in the digger and dig a pond. It's magical. It's just how quick stuff comes to it and how much comes to it. Even if it's scraping the ground, even if it doesn't keep water in it all year, give it a go, because if it's wet enough in this country, it'll keep a bit of stuff in for the frogs and spring and the dragonfly and stuff like that.
I'm so glad you said that, because often we ask farmers, what's the single one thing you should do for a pond? It's always a pond. And it's actually pretty simple to do as well, isn't it? It's like digging a hole.
There's a good book by a writer, John Lewis Stimple. I can't remember the name of it. It's gone now, but it's about ponds on farms and ponds around what they bring, It's even if it's a bucket, it's better than nothing.
Listen, thanks so much for your attention this morning, and thanks so much to these three panellists. Amazing people and vocational in what they do, and we're delighted to have them share their knowledge this morning. I should say as well that there's some great networks out there. Eddie referenced Nature Friendly Farming Network, which is really good to have a stand here, and Farming for Nature is another organisation down south, where we try and celebrate farmers and share their knowledge through various media and books and things like that. So there's plenty of resources out there, and hopefully these guys have inspired you to begin your own Farming for Nature journey. Thank you very much. Have a great Feels Good, everybody. Bye-bye.